How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge. About 1000. Today is November 23rd, 2021, and today we're going to focus on the potential for our first snowstorm for a lot of you guys in the Northeast as well as the Midwest for going into this weekend and into early next week. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the European model precipitation map for forecast precipitation map, and you see that right around Friday on November 26th, just the day after Thanksgiving, you see that we're gonna see a pretty weak trough move through, a pretty weak mid-latitude cyclone move through, along with a jet stream dip on the backside, induced by decently moderately strong northwesterly flow that's bringing strong winds and cold air further southward, and you're gonna see that we're gonna see a big jet stream dip as a result of it on the backside, and that could lead to not only some snow for a lot of the interior northeast portions, especially closer to the Great Lakes region, but we could see some snow as well further southward into next week if we were to see a clipper system move through and develop into something powerful enough to dump snow in some portions of the Midwest and Northeast next week. So if we were to take a look at what the European model is forecasting regarding this clipper system, you see that the clipper system moves southward right around Saturday, November 27th. Throughout, it moves through North Dakota and Minnesota, and you see that it's fairly weak with its millibar pressure centered right around 1009 millibars and 1010 millibars respectively, and it isn't dumping a lot of snow over a very large area. As the snow isn't necessarily heavy, there isn't a ton of unstable air for this low pressure system to have a lot of lift within its core and a lot of convection. So as a result, the snow isn't necessarily very heavy, but it is enough to dump at least a couple inches of snow throughout the Midwest, and we could see the storm strengthen just a little bit once it heads towards the Northeast, and of course it'll encounter a little bit more instability thanks to the warmer Atlantic Ocean that's going to be warmer than the air temperature, and that'll create a little bit more of an unstable environment just off the Northeast coast for the snow to potentially be a little bit more heavier if this clipper system were to come for fruition and move further southward into the Northeast. But there's still a lot of days to iron out this forecast. If we were to take a look, you see that low pressure moves along the Northeast coast and it strengthens a little bit down to 1003 millibars, and we do see some snow in some of the big cities. So this isn't just an interior Northeast threat, it's impacting Philadelphia, it's impacting New York City in this scenario, and it's impacting southern New England. So if this were to come for fruition, it could impact the bigger cities and those closer along the coast, which for many of you would be your first snow of the year in those areas. But there's still a lot of things we have to iron out. We of course need to see if there will be enough cold air for the precipitation to fall as snow, especially right along the coast, because while the European model is forecasting a lot of the coastal areas of the Northeast to mainly receive snow in this scenario, there's still a lot that could change within the next couple of days regarding this forecast. We could see the low pressure system take a track further northward, which would mean that more of the warm air will filter in along coastal cities, and it would primarily be more of a rain event in that scenario. However, there's also a possibility this moves even further southward, where more cold air filters in along the coastal areas, and you're more likely to receive snow in that scenario in certain areas, especially closer along the coast and further southward as well. So there's still a lot to iron out with the forecast, especially its track. And also we also need to keep in mind that the Atlantic Ocean is still very warm, since it's still only early November. As I went to the beach on this weekend, and the water temperatures were just off the Jersey Shore were still in the upper 50s, as that's warm enough to swim in for people more used to the cold water. But So the water is still relatively warm for late November, and it's warmer than average at this point. And since it's warmer than average, that could raise the temperatures along the coast to a point where it'll be really difficult for it to snow because ocean will warm up the temperatures a little bit too much for the precipitation to fall in the form of snow. It's not until the later months in the winter, such as December, January, and February, where the water temperatures get cold enough to bring for the temperature to for snow to be more likely along the coast. But in late November, it's the water temperatures are still really warm, so a lot of coastal areas could still mainly see precipitation in the form of rain. But in this case, the European is taking a scenario where it's bringing snow to the northeast, and you might be wondering how much snow is the European bringing. Well, if we were to take a look at the forecasted snowfall provided from the European model, you're going to see that it isn't a lot of snow. If we were to take a look at it, you see that we have a good area of mainly 1 to 3 inches, but we do have some areas, interestingly, right around 3 to 6 inches, which for a lot of the Northeast could be considered a significant snowstorm for you guys, especially closer along the coast, since 3 to 6 inches is definitely something you need to at least be aware of. Keep in mind, this is just measuring the amount of precipitable snowfall that's coming from the sky and not really sticking on the ground. So the snow totals are more likely than not less than what the European model is stating in this forecast map, but it's still bringing accumulating snowfall throughout the Northeast, and it's at least something to be aware of if this were to come for fruition and we see around 1 to 3 inches of snow, because that still could cause problems along the roadways throughout the Northeast. So while this won't be necessarily an extremely major snowstorm if this scenario were correct, but it'll at least be something to at least be aware of, and especially if you enjoy the snow, this could be your first opportunity to experience your first snowfall for the year for a lot of Northeast. But there's still a lot of uncertainty, and the uncertainty is even higher because the GFS model isn't really bringing any sort of snowstorm throughout the Midwest and the Northeast. If we were to take a look at the radar forecast provided from the GFS model, you're going to see that while this first trough that moves through, it's definitely going to bring snow to the interior Northeast. It seems like both the primary computer models, GFS and European model, are agreeing that we're going to see a pretty significant snowstorm for some of you guys in the interior Northeast, especially in the higher elevations. What is more uncertain is if we're going to see a clipper system on the back side of this trough move southward into the Great Lakes and the Northeast and bring a snowstorm for a lot of you guys further southward. That's the question that's still very difficult to answer at this time. You see that the GFS model, while it does bring us a little bit of a clipper system to further southward, it's extremely weak, and there just isn't enough unstable air or lift in the atmosphere to create any sort of precipitation out of this area of low pressure. So as a result, it just sort of fizzles out as it moves further southward. We do see maybe a little bit of snow in the higher elevations of West Virginia, but outside of that, there isn't really anything going on in the Northeast right around the same time frame as the European model, which is definitely very interesting. The GFS model just doesn't detect enough unstable air to have at least some sort of precipitation out of this low pressure system, and it's not until it just gets well off the East Coast where we eventually do see this low pressure develop. But by that point, it's going to be well off the coast and not bringing much of any precipitation to the Northeast at this point, so it wouldn't be a worry in that scenario. So when we see both of the main computer models disagreeing regarding how much precipitation there is and which areas will exactly receive precipitation or not, or if this low pressure system will even have any precipitation associated with it, it becomes very difficult to forecast and to say with certainty if we'll even see a snowstorm out of this low pressure system or not throughout the southern northeastern states, as well as a more southern Great Lakes region where maybe areas such as Minneapolis, Chicago could get impacted, and maybe Cleveland, Ohio as well. So there's still a lot of uncertainty as a result of the two main computer models having pretty big disagreements on whether or not this snowstorm will actually form or not. So we just need to wait and see how these two computer models iron out their forecasts over the next several days. What will make it more likely for a snowstorm to form out of this low pressure system moving further southward is if there is enough unstable air in the atmosphere right around the eastern half of the United States. You see in the GFS model's case, while there is a jet stream dip, the jet stream dip isn't so stark that it's enough to produce a lot of lift around the low pressure system and as a result to produce precipitation for a snowstorm to occur. So the GFS model doesn't expect a lot of instability or enough instability just yet to see if there for any sort of snowstorm to form. As you could see, if we were to move forward as of the latest GFS model run, it isn't really forecasting a low pressure system to develop as the jet stream dips further southward into the eastern half of the United States, which is quite interesting. But the European model is expecting a little bit more unstable air right around the same time frame into late the weekend into early next week. You see, and let me go to the high resolution European model to show you guys the actual radar. There just isn't enough. There's a little bit more instability with the European model to induce a higher chance of a snowstorm throughout the southern northeast. So we just need to wait and see over the next several days how this first trough moves through the northeast, because that will definitely determine what happens with this next clipper system. Because if there's enough of a strong northwesterly flow associated with this first trough moving through that's going to bring snow to the interior northeast as well as the interior Great Lakes region, then we could see our first snowstorm for a lot of you guys throughout the southern Great Lakes region as well as the coastal northeast region. So we just need to wait and see. If we were to base it off of recency bias based on how reliable the two computer models have been as of recently, so far the GFS model has been a little bit more reliable as of recently, as of the most recent events. So it might be better to maybe lean a little bit more towards the GFS model, which would maybe bring pretty much no snow at all throughout the southern Great Lakes as well as the coastal region of the northeast. But we can't completely disregard the European model just yet because it's still a very reliable model. So we just need to wait and see how the forecasts iron out and how this chop moves into the eastern half of the United States, because that'll definitely make a big difference when it comes to when it comes to the forecast regarding this low pressure system. Next, taking a look at the Arctic oscillation, which is a very big determinant in whether or not you'll experience colder than average conditions or snowier than average conditions throughout the United States. You see that we're going to be in the negative phase up until maybe early December, where we do rebound back to a positive phase based on the forecast. But by the time this low pressure system moves through, we're still going to be in the negative phase. So that would enhance the chance of some sort of snowstorm or much colder temperatures to occur throughout the eastern half of the United States, which is definitely interesting when we're in the when we're in a negative Arctic oscillation. Next, let's take a look at the let's take a look at what typically happens during a negative and positive Arctic oscillation. In case you don't know, you see that during a negative Arctic oscillation, we typically have weaker jet stream winds. So as a result, the cold air is less likely to be trapped further northward, and it's more likely to diverge further southward into the United States, bringing cooler and snowier conditions throughout the United States during a negative Arctic oscillation. While during a positive Arctic oscillation, the opposite happens, where we do see stronger jet stream winds, which traps the cold air from northward, which means that the United States experiences less snowstorms and less cold air as a result of this. So next thing, look at my forecast regarding the likelihood of snow. I think snow is likely throughout the interior northeast as well as the interior Great Lakes region. But pretty much induced by this first trough that's going to move through the United States, where we're going to see cold temperatures cold enough and not just enough lake effect snow for it to be likely to experience snow. I'd say the snow will be in excess of 3 to 6 inches for the most part, but the big question remains whether or not we're going to see snow in the more southern areas of Great Lakes, which includes Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Chicago, Cleveland, and even New York City and Philadelphia could get involved if this Clipper system were to encounter just enough instability for precipitation to occur in the form of snow. So we just need to wait and see how the forecast models iron out over the next several days, but I'll make sure to keep you guys updated with the latest updates regarding this Clipper system. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather lake content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather lake content. I hope you guys have a good day.